Okay, so a bit of background. So microservices, I'm brand new to this area. So if you're looking for an in-depth kind of overview of exactly what microservices is, I can give you. I've been working in this area for 3 months. So this is kind of the lessons I've learned in the last 3 months. So if you already know a stack load about microservices, treat it as humor. Okay. Is there anyone with a lot of microservices experience? Perfect. Okay. I'll cover a bit of how I ended up doing microservices. So I was very much, the subject was going to be big data, and my background is big data, but now my background is microservices. So I'm going to explain why I think my viewpoint on microservices is interesting enough to stand up in front of you and brazen it out. Okay, so I'm going to first of all go through, really, if you're going to do 2 things after this, ignore everything, feel free to ignore everything I say. Go and watch Martin Fowler's 2014 video on microservices. It is really, really good. Martin Fowler, he takes a very skeptical approach, so it's very balanced. It's a really good overview of where it came from, the history, what it's good for, and some of the risks. And even though it's a little bit old, I found this amazingly helpful when getting into microservices. Do we distribute the PowerPoints? So the PowerPoint, the link should be in there. If not, it's really easy to Google this. And it's a 15-minute video. He's also got, he does a 45-minute presentation on 3 subjects. It's the last one. His one on continuous delivery is good as well. But really, watch that if you're interested in microservices. That's a really good overview. The second one is Coda Hale's talk on metrics everywhere. This is really old, 2011. It's very Java focused. But the first 15 minutes are talking about business value and minding the gap. Those I found really, really useful tools, and I'll explain a bit of why I found them really useful later on. But watch those 2; they are really good. And I'll come on to mind the gap and business value later. It's a really useful tool for thinking about what you do and what you're trying to do as developers, testers, DevOps, things like that. Just a quick show of hands. Who would count themselves as developers? Okay, testers? Okay, good. DevOps? Okay. Data scientists? Ooh. Excellent. So we've got a good mix, mainly developers. And hopefully, as developers, when I said testers, you all test your own stuff with unit testing. I'm assuming all that good stuff. Okay, so those are the 2 key takeaways. So I'm really not going to talk much about microservices. I'll quickly go through a very quick 101. Martin Fowler's stuff is really good, and he's got an associated web page. I'll flash up some of the stuff he's done. So if you watch the video, you'll recognize it. So basically on the left is monolithic software. This is kind of what we've been building for years and years and years. So basically you have multiple servers, because everything has to be multiple servers now, but you're running all your bits of your software in one executable typically. You may be, and each box will then run exactly the same software on each of the servers. So a really simple monolithic model for scaling out, which is good, and it's worked. So Hadoop's kind of based on this a little bit, things like that. The microservices is just really about components and running, instead of running as a big monolithic piece of software on each server, breaking your monolith down into microservices, which are basically components that run in their own Docker image or something like that. And then what you do is you run the pieces around the cluster. So it's a very, sorry guys at the back. I like to point. Is that better? Ooh. Okay, so microservices, really simple idea. Instead of distributing everything everywhere, you just break your monolith down into pieces, and you can then scale each of those pieces individually. So you can do different HA models. You can scale, if you find that, say, your parser's the one that's the bottleneck, you can then fire up more parser images. So you've basically broken this down into something that's much more flexible, much more scalable. So that's the basic. It's really easy. Okay. Okay. I've kind of covered the bit. What are microservices? So there's a lot of Microservices really is software as a service, but a very well-defined part of software as a service. And Martin Fowler really goes into that nicely. So I'm not going to cover it. I'm not going to cover the history of components or anything like that, or how we got here. So they're really simple. They're really small. They do one thing well. From a cultural perspective, the ideal microservice should be developed. A 3-person team should be able to develop a microservice in 2 to 4 weeks. So again, you've got a useful unit of measure to know when you've done and how much work is involved. If you're doing any more work than that, you haven't defined the service well. If you've done any less work than that, then that's okay, but it's probably not going to survive the test of time, that service. So you've got a useful metric, and again, it's a useful. What will happen? The team that built that service, will then manage and operate that service going forwards into production. So it kind of ties in with the whole DevOps culture. So really, microservices is a lot more about culture than technology. I'll cover some of the technology because I learned a lot here on the technology side. But a lot of the stuff I've learned in the last 3 months is more about how you run a team to deliver business value to customers. Okay, so some of the benefits here: scaling, ease of deployment. So continuous delivery, really kind of microservices is assuming continuous delivery pretty much. DevOps culture. I'll cover some of this organizational alignment later on. So this is part of the cultural side of things. I can't break this, can I? This is solid? Okay, good. And the main thing is, this is not a silver bullet, right? If the ideas for microservices work for your particular project, that's great. If they don't work, don't do it. You do pay a heavy price for all of this. I'll cover the price. There is a significant price. I would probably say, unless you start simple and build, if you go all in to microservices, it's really complicated. But so take it easy, and I'll come on to how I got into it, or work with the team that's already done it. Because then you're just piggybacking off all of the mistakes they've made. Okay. I'm not really going to cover the characteristics of microservices. Martin Fowler does a great job here. I'll probably just call out DevOps. This is a really good concept here, designing for failure, because you're basically running on cloud-type environments, you're running Docker images. This stuff will fail all the time. So as a developer, as a tester, as a DevOps, you should be expecting things to fail all the time. And that has a massive impact on how you think about your software. And I'll cover that a bit later on. There's a great, I didn't know this till I watched Martin Fowler's video. I think it's eBay, I don't know who it is, I don't really, they have something that they run in production called the Chaos Monkey. Netflix. So if you haven't heard about the Chaos Monkey, this is awesome. So this is their production environment. They have something running in their production environment that turns off services randomly in production. I mean, everyone here in financial services? Yep, financial services? Okay. Can you imagine doing that in your production environment? Killing processes? No way, yeah. So it's crazy, but Netflix does it. And you have to, as a Netflix team, you have to be thinking about the Chaos Monkey. So your complete approach to developing software changes. This is an awesome concept. Martin goes into it. Anyone doing this in production is so brave, so confident. And it goes through their entire culture. Okay, I'm going to say a bit about how I got here, because I've made some mistakes, okay? And because we're at Barclays, I've made some mistakes for Barclays. So the stuff in bold is, okay, imagine this is my CV. It's not bad, okay? So I've done, I was working in big data a long time ago. We were doing Scrum a long time ago. Hadoop, we were one of the first commercial products on Hadoop. It's all good stuff, or it should be. We had, as a UK startup, we had some big customers, AT&T, T-Mobile, Credit Suisse and Barclays. So we were then acquired we were making some reasonable money. You know, we were looking for a successful exit, and we got bought by Teradata in 2014. But I would have been talking about big data, but I'm talking about microservices. So why am I in this room talking about microservices? Okay, well, it turns out I was making mistakes from about as CTO of the company, I was making mistakes about our software from about 2012, 2013, and I didn't realize it. So some of the things I've learned from microservices and some of the cultural stuff, actually, if I knew that then, I wouldn't have made those mistakes. So a lot of what I've learned about microservices is useful for microservices, but it's also about culture, about thinking how you deliver software successfully to your customers. So that's one of the real things I get from microservices is really that focus on making it robust and making it do exactly what it should do, nothing more, nothing less, and really focusing on what it is you're delivering. So mistakes were made. Okay, not all the mistakes. The reason we were put into maintenance mode, it's not all down to me. It's, you know, there's lots of reasons why products aren't successful. But you do need to go over as technologists. If we make mistakes, we need to try and understand what mistakes we made and don't do it again. So the microservice thing is really. Sorry, I'm not using this as group therapy or anything. This is, if it comes across as that, that's not my intent. So they reformed our team because obviously we had a lot of good experience, you know, great big data experience, great Scrum experience. UK, so we're really cheap compared to American development teams. They then added 4 data scientists to the group. I mean, how cool is that? So we're now working on 2 new products. So one of them is a microservices product. So there's already a team in Austin that's been working in microservices for a year. We're helping them accelerate their GA process. So they've already got the first release out. We're helping them with the next point release. So we've had the benefit of piggybacking off a microservices team. We've been given a microservices stack and things like that. So we've been able to bootstrap ourselves pretty quickly. We're working on a brand new product as well, with 0 lines of code. As a developer, tester, DevOps, that is fantastic. And so there's also some of the things from the microservices. We've been able to completely change how we develop software. Just little things, but they've made a massive difference for us. So I'll pass those on. Hopefully I'm not going to come across as too out of date or anything like that. And because we have to use microservices here, we're going to use microservices here as well, because it makes sense. The thing, we're still working in a big data area. If you've got the microservices experience, it is really good. It's future-proofed, it's scalable, it's robust. But there is an entry cost, so I'll cover exactly what I think that is later on. And we also had, because we were selling software to enterprise customers, we had a PS team and we had a support team. Those are exactly the sort of people you want working as DevOps. They're the people that worry at night that the product's not working. A customer can't do an upgrade. A customer reports a problem. What went wrong? So we also had, we didn't have to go out and find these really rare beasts called a DevOps. We had a PS team and we had a support team, and we retooled them. So we were very lucky. We were very lucky on that. So we're now into our 3rd sprint, just to make it so you understand exactly how far through into this process we are. We're into our 3rd 2-week sprint. Obviously, it's taken about 6 weeks for the entire team to twist their head around from big data to microservices, because there is a lot of technology changes and there is a lot of cultural changes as well. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt, right? I might be back here, well, I might not be back here, but I might be back here in a year saying something completely different. Okay, so we're 3 sprints in. How's it going? Mostly it's positive. As a technologist, it's fantastic. It's great. We're playing with the latest toys. It's awesome for our CVs and things like that. But there are some pretty big cons. So I'm not a CTO anymore. I'm a Why am I? VP of Engineering, some of the cons really concern me. So I'll raise those with you as well. And I'm not trying to sell stuff, so you don't know what product I'm working on, so it doesn't matter what I say. Okay, so this is kind of one of the cultural things, business value. So this probably sounds really obvious to you all. So business value and good enough. Coda Hall covers this really well. As a developer, a tester, a DevOps person, every single discussion you should be having should be centered around the business value you're delivering. Whether you're delivering it to your manager, to your customer, whether you're discussing it with the product owner. If the tester and the engineer are having a conversation, technical conversation is fine, but they should also be discussing business value. Because if you're not delivering business value, you're building an ivory tower or you're doing the wrong thing. And if you're given a task that you can't see the direct business value for, push back. If you're a tester or a developer, you should really be saying, why am I doing this piece of work? This doesn't make sense. These are lean times, so really focusing everybody in your organization on business value. Quite often, this might be just preaching to the converted, but you should really be thinking about everything you do in these terms. But you should only ever aim for good enough. So right now there is some great free stuff out there. If you go beyond good enough, again, you're gilding the lily, you're building an ivory tower. Don't do it. And everyone in the team should be recognizing that point at which you kind of go, wouldn't it be nice to? No. Move on and deliver some more business value. Keep going. Don't lose time. And this has really helped us across the board. So just two really simple concepts mainly from Coda Hale's talk, but it kind of from the microservices culture thing. Every aspect of the team's work now, when it comes to communication, whether it's developers, story creation, what is the business value for this story? You're working on the story, is it good enough? Those are just really simple questions to ask all the time. I was surprised. I'm old and I've been doing this a long time. I was surprised how just these two simple things really made my life a lot easier and simplified a lot of the discussion. You quite often have those really long, protracted discussions about theoretical scenarios and stuff like that. Just drop business value or good enough into that conversation, job done, walk away. It's a great way to stop having silly conversations. Okay, the clean slate. This was a really good plus. As a developer, tester, having 0 lines of code is perfect. There are no bugs. The code coverage is awesome. So we switched to. So we've been doing agile, but we were doing 4-week sprints. We switched down to 2 weeks. That was a great change. Probably, how many people here are doing sprints? Okay. Are you all doing who's doing 2-week sprints? Okay, 4-week sprints? Yeah, 4 weeks is tough. 4 weeks is, anyone doing 1 week? We did a couple of 2-day sprints and we were kind of surprised. We were playing around because we had 6 weeks of learning stuff. We played around with some strange stuff. We tried some 2-day sprints and they weren't anywhere near as bad as you thought. But a 2-week sprint is a really good choice because any time that's wasted really stands out in 2 weeks. You'll start failing to deliver in a 2-week sprint if you're wasting time. But I'll come on to some of the problems that 2-week sprints caused for us. From a development environment, we just refreshed our stack. So we used to be C, C++, a bit of Java. We were Java 6, so we're completely now all in Java 8, Gradle. If you're not using Gradle, you probably know a better tool. So if you're not using Gradle and you don't know a better tool, why not? Gradle is fantastic. We turned on the style checking. These are basically just checking that you've not made stupid bugs. But the level of checking these two do, I used both these tools about 5 years ago, and they were quite annoying. Whereas now, I struggle to find out why Find Bugs has told me there's a problem, because it's got that sophisticated. It says you don't need to do this, and I have to sit back and go, it's probably right, but why is it right? So these are really saving us from making a lot of stupid errors before we even check the code in. And we've got code coverage turned on. So code coverage, we're mandated to measure code coverage, but we're trying to use it as a useful metric within the development environment as well. So we have to do this, but having it built into the Gradle process so our engineers can track where the code coverage is like, is actually, we're finding that quite useful. So use Gradle. We were SVN, we're now Git. Yeah, I don't care. These are all good tools. Yeah, for automation, yeah, Jenkins, that seems to be the best out there at the moment. And for our objects, we were using Artifactory. One of the great things for microservices is now, as a developer, we deliver Docker images. And that's a great contract between developers and testers. We pass off, when we version a Docker image, it goes completely installed into our test process, and they know the REST API, so it's really simplified how the development and the test team work. So microservices really help the contract between developers and testers quite a lot. Okay, and we've updated our library, so we're still JUnit, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Log back, yeah, it's very good. Coda Hale's metrics, if you're not, watch that video. Watch that video. I'll cover metrics in a bit. And for the rest, we're using vert.x. It seemed pretty good. We spent a bit of time looking at it. It seemed good enough. From the test side, we're doing all our end-to-end testing. Our dev test ratio changed significantly. So we went from 2 developers to one tester. We're now probably at 3 developers, 1 tester. So we've had to really be careful about our test resources. So the developers have to do an awful lot. What we've done there is we've added in DevOps to help alleviate that pressure. So all the end-to-end testing is done via Cucumber. I'll cover that in the next slide. Has anyone heard of Cucumber? Yeah, it's very good. It's awesome. And it's really helped communications as well. So even our product owner can understand a Cucumber test and comment on it. So the ability to just communicate within the team through simple stuff like this is improved. We're using REST Assured. Testing REST APIs is not hard. I mean, curl is good enough. We haven't got anything for performance testing yet. And we've mandated code reviews, test reviews. So we basically refreshed our technology stack from 8 years ago to this is what we think is the best for us right now. If you're using that stuff, that's great. If you're not, it might be worth thinking about making a move on some of these, particularly Gradle and the metrics stuff. I mean, that's seriously worth considering. Cucumber's been really useful. So it's basically a way of specifying end-to-end testing kind of in English. And the aim here is what you do is you provide an English specification, and then behind the scenes, it'll generate a whole load of templates, hopefully using tests you've already built before. But it's a good way for the tester to say, hey, developer, I need to test this. You need to provide this. And you end up with something really, really nice here. So this is a really simple example. For one product, you would probably have, well, actually, there are a lot of Cucumber people out here. You should have more than one test for a product. To be decided how many you should have per particular feature. But they're really, really easy. Basically, this is for our stuff. Set me up in a known state, do something, and then something should happen. And behind the scenes, a lot of Java's developed. It should generate it automatically. It measures all this stuff for you. It's just great. And it improves your communication between your teams, which is really what we wanted from it. Okay, this is the first con. The technical stack for microservices, if you go all in, so if you go to the end game, if you don't go in slowly, so we were thrown in the deep end, the stack is really deep. So even before we can run one of our Docker containers, we need all of this stuff. So our stack from top to bottom, so this is really the bottom, the lowest level is your virtualization layer. We're using OpenStack. It's basically just a way to do stuff with VMs. On top of that, we use Vagrant to basically provision VMs. I'm not going to go into, Google's great for looking at what these kind of things are. So Vagrant, really, all it does is it provisions the VMs. We just say, hey, fire some up. We want 5. Fire them up. Ansible will then kick in and configure all of these VMs so that they then run the rest of this stack. This is really where we want to get to. We want to get to Docker, Mesos, and Marathon, but we have to go through Ansible because it's a great configuration. It's a great way of setting up loads and loads of VMs automatically. If you want software, it'll bring them down, patch them, put them back up again. So Ansible is a really great way to not have to worry, to basically from this point in, everything's configured how you want it, exactly how you want it. On top of that, we then add Docker, which is lightweight containers. That's all you're getting from Docker. You can get lots of things from Docker, but we're kind of keeping the boundaries for each of these blur an awful lot. So we're keeping what each thing does really, really simple so that we know exactly what it's doing for us. So that if you start going too far down a route of saying, well, couldn't we get Docker to do this and a bit of this? Yeah, of course you can, but we've picked this as our stack. Mesos is then doing your distributed resource negotiation. So we've done Yarn before from Hadoop, so doing Mesos is really nice. It's got a very nice CPU memory disk model. It's great. And then on top of that, Marathon basically manages the configuration of our application. And I'll show a Marathon screen in a bit. But from a support perspective, how many things can go wrong? I mean, this is a massively complex piece of software. So this really needs to have been tested and tested and tested and tested. So luckily, we had a group in Austin who had already done that for years. So we're pretty comfortable now that this works and we know how we're using it. On top of that, we're also running other services. So we're using Kafka for distributed messaging, and we're also using Elk for our logging and monitoring. Elk, does everyone know what Elk is? Okay, so Elk is just Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. It's just a really great combination of getting your logs and your performance data into one place so that a support team or a DevOps can understand what the system is doing. So I'll cover that later on. But if you haven't got, if you're in a position to actually introduce Elk into your environment and you haven't got performance and monitoring, this is a really good thing to have. And it's a really, for microservices, it's essential. If you don't have good logging, good tracking of the performance, good tracking of what happened, the ability to search, you're dead in the water. Okay, OpenStack. Geez, this was really, really hard. One of our first jobs was to build our own OpenStack environment on our own. We reprovisioned a Hadoop, an 8-node Hadoop cluster to OpenStack. Yeah, we thought a couple of days. 6 weeks later. I mean, it's ridiculous. So this was a massive mistake. There were so many other things we should have done. We should have used AWS, but AWS is expensive. You need a budget. Amazon have done a fantastic job. I mean, that stuff just works, and you don't have to set it up. Mirantis is an OpenStack provider. We should have used their VMs. We shouldn't have tried to do it ourselves. So this is a huge mistake. How am I doing for time? Okay. Yeah. But having gone through 6 weeks of hell, we lost one DevOps, probably 2 DevOps for about 6 weeks, which is a ridiculous investment in time just to get that level 1 of our OpenStack. So don't make this mistake. Get the professionals in, or get somebody that's done it before. Okay, this is Marathon. This is a screenshot of Marathon running against one of Teradata's microservices applications. So you don't need to read the detail, but basically there are lots of interesting things like that. These are the services. This is how much memory each one's using. This is how many instances of each is running. And this is how many cores is each. So in this cores column, you probably can't see it. This one's running half a core. This one's running 0.3 of a core. This one's running 2 cores. What is that about? I mean, if you come and look at this as a customer, this is just nonsense. and there are literally 30 of these services running. So microservices, you'll typically have anywhere from 20 to 300 services running at any one point in time, and you'll be running lots of copies of them for high availability, for scalability and things like this. This is a nightmare from a support perspective. You can't let your customers see this. It's ridiculous. Luckily, this is where Coda Hale comes to the rescue with his 2011 talk. So his talk is all about minding the gap. So basically it's verifying, the way he presents it, it's all measuring what you think this is. So basically measure everything that is delivering business value, metricate it, measure it, log it, send that performance information, and then just continually track that it's doing what you expect it to do. And this is really, this really comes down to the chaos monkey. If you're not logging, monitoring, alerting, the chaos monkey will kill you. You have to run a chaos monkey. You have to be brave enough that you can run a chaos monkey. So the chaos monkey is the reason we have most of these services are up at 3. Marathon will restart services for us if they go down. So services that can be restarted will be restarted. The services that have to always be up, you have to run multiple copies because the chaos monkey will get in there. But having been visited by the chaos monkey, you need to be able to go back and find out why. What did the chaos monkey do that caused this problem? Because you will find problems. Hopefully the system will repair itself. But you need to be really using ELK as a minimum here. You need to have something. So this is Kibana running on top of Elasticsearch and Logstash. So basically, all of our logs, all of our performance metrics get centralized. Well, it's not centralized. Obviously, it's distributed because it's got to be ELK's got to be fault tolerant. But it then allows you to present these really simple monitoring dashboards for your DevOps. These are not customer facing, but it allows them to look at trends, search for stuff that went wrong, and things like that. So ELK is it's really good. If you're not using it, look at it. And again, the DevOps culture helps here as well. So we've got this really complicated system, but luckily, this is where the DevOps really pay off. They are the most worried people on the planet. They know that they're going to have to support this stuff, this nightmare stuff. So they're continuing. We always team up. We always have one tester, maybe a couple of developers, but always one DevOps. Because there has to be a conscience at the back saying, well, what about the chaos monkey? What about the chaos monkey? What happens if this... So everyone is thinking about what happens if this stuff fails. So the combination of you have to measure this stuff, it has to be discoverable, and you have to be worrying about it. Otherwise, you've got a system that looks really cute, but it's going to fail almost immediately. And the key thing here is capture and trend every metric that relates to business value. So again, you're thinking continuously, what is this service doing that's important to the customer, or to whoever's using this system? I need to be making sure, for instance, if it's latency, you have to be measuring latency and trending it to see what is my latency within tolerance, or is it starting to slip? And if it starts to slip, you need to start alerting someone. So you have to, as part of the design process, think about what metrics am I going to put in place to make sure that I can continue to deliver business value and that DevOps has a good chance of sleeping at night. I'm nearly there, so... okay, this was a real weird thing for me. I'm a technologist. Sociology, psychology, it's all nonsense to me. But it turns out it's not. So I learned, this is probably just that I'm too focused on being a geek. I should have known this. I did know Parkinson's law. So Parkinson's law basically says, if you ask someone to fill a bath and give them 8 hours, it'll take 8 hours. At the end of the 8 hours, there'll be a nice warm bath, there'll probably be some candles, there'll probably be some scented something in there, a bit of bubble bath, but it will take 8 hours. For a 2-week sprint, that is a nightmare. Because with a 2-week sprint, if your estimation process is off even by a few days, at the end of the sprint, you've got story that should be completed. It's good enough. It's ready to go. It's delivered the business value. But your engineers are probably saying, well, I've got 2 weeks. I'll use those 3 days. And in a 2-week sprint, those missing 3 days add up. So we've really been using good enough to combat Parkinson's law. So your estimating will be wrong. If you've underestimated, that's fine. There are perfectly good ways of handling underestimation. If you've overestimated, use good enough. And this is kind of the microservices thing. Just get on with it. Just stop as soon as you can stop. Stop. And because we noticed this as a problem, we then had a way to solve the problem with good enough. But because we're now minding the gap, so we're looking at where our version of what we think the territory is, when it differs with the territory, we then have to do something about it to correct it. So we're now trying to improve our estimating to try and reduce the problem. Because we now have a lot of stories that start 3 days towards the end of the sprint. Because we've got engineering capacity now. We've freed up engineers and testers, and they've got 3 days left till the end of the sprint. That freaks developers, testers, and DevOps out. So that's a problem for us, and we haven't got a great answer. But at least we've got 3 days worth of those people back to do something, even if it's a spike for 3 days. Conway's law, we're still getting around this. Does anyone know what Conway's law is without having read it? Okay.
It's not how committees do invention.
That's exactly right. So it's basically, if you've got whatever you build as an organization will reflect the organizational structure. So if you have 4 teams working on a compiler, you will end up with a 4-pass compiler, or something like that. We made this mistake at Rainstorm. We split our teams into a query team and an applications team. And that seems really benign, but then what happens is every time you want to run a new feature, you have to say, well, this is a query team feature, but the query team are capacity bound. I've already given them 5 stories. So straight away, the fact you've organized those teams into 2 causes you problems. Not everyone can work on every piece of the software, which for microservices is a bit of a disaster. So we're holding off right now on, we're running really large scrums. We're running 16 people scrums because we're frightened of Conway's law right now. We don't want to split the team into 2. If we do split them into 2, we want to make sure that it's transient. So one sprint you work in one team, the next sprint you work in another team, so that you don't specialize. It's great to take ownership. Once you build a component, that's yours. But you don't want to be too specialized in one particular area of the infrastructure. So we learned about Conway's law. We haven't got it right. We're delaying till we know more. But once you know about Conway's law, a lot of the problems we had in the past kind of make sense. And when you know about things like good enough and business value, a lot of the mistakes I made were to do with business value, good enough, minding the gap, and Conway's law. Finally, shared vision. So this is a cultural thing. So basically, don't have a meeting if there are more than 3 people don't have a meeting with more than 3 people. And don't have a meeting if you disagree with 2 of those people. A meeting, to be successful, you should agree on 95% of things that you're going to discuss in that meeting. If it goes down to 90% or 85%, the meeting starts either carrying on too long or not making progress and being useless. So all of your meetings really should be thinking about, have we got shared vision? There are obviously some meetings where you need to have robust conversations. They will involve more than 3 people. Plan for those. Try and get a lot of the consensus building out the way. I'm not brilliant at this, but I'm new to the concept of shared vision. We've also used this to really cut out. We were running 4-week sprints. In a 4-week sprint, we would have an elaboration phase where everybody and their dog turned up for a 2-hour meeting to discuss each story. If you run 12 stories, everyone's in that meeting. That was the first 5 days of our sprint gone. A 2-week sprint, you can't afford to have meetings with lots of people in them listening because they're interested. You've got to start coding, you've got to start testing, You've got to start delivering business value. Really cut down on those meetings. And meetings aren't fun. No one enjoys meetings. People enjoy coding, they enjoy testing, they enjoy breaking stuff. Don't have a meeting. And part of my job now, as being on the wrong side of the fence now as a VP of engineering, is really just trying to facilitate people to do the stuff they enjoy. They want to code. They want to make sensible decisions. So keep a shared vision. And Coder has a good video on this. It's quite difficult to watch it all the way through. So there's one on organisational stuff there. It's quite entertaining, but it's quite difficult. But it's possibly, if you think your shared vision's a problem for you, then watch that video. Getting very close. So I've got 4 minutes. Yeah, great. The final thing. So this is a real pro for me because as a CTO working in financial services, security is a frigging nightmare. Talking to your CSOs is horrible. We've inherited a security model. Woohoo! And it's not a bad security model. So, everything's REST-based. So we've got certificates, we've got LDAP for authentication authorization, we've got tokens and things like that. So it's not a terrible security model. We can defend it. It's a relatively common one. We haven't got a great story on delegation. So, that's something that we're going to have a problem with at some point, but I'm not going to be the one that has to worry about it. So security in a microservices is worse than it is in your current production systems because you've got services talking to other services, talking to other services. So potentially you've got this massive chain of delegation. So a lot of the Oasis stuff probably works well here and is great, but people that understand this stuff are very few and very far between. So we've not dealt with this, and this is a common model. You kind of run a trust model within your microservices, but with this stuff and this stuff and this stuff to try and increase the barrier. So this is more just me being relieved I didn't have to think about security for once. But it is a big microservices problem. So depending on what application you're going to be doing, this could suck up a hell of a lot of time. So that's pretty much all I've learned in the last 3 months of my life. I wish I knew a lot of that before. A lot of it you may think is just you knew or common sense, but to me, when I used a lot of the business value, the good enough, the mind the gap, and went back and reviewed what I'd done in the last 4 years, a lot of the mistakes I made became really obvious to me. So Microsoft, a lot of it is about culture. The technology is interesting, it's cool, but it's not massively new. A lot of the ideas have been out there. You've been running Hadoop, you've been running big data. I think it's a lot of microservices is about culture and how you think about on software. It's really hard to start a microservices project unless you start it really simply. If you try and go all in, you're either going to fail or you're going to use a lot of time, or work with a team that's already done it. So if you want to do microservices, take an existing application. Don't write a new application. Take an existing application, break it down. So Martin Fallon's got lots of useful advice in that area, but it is really difficult to start a microservices project. And that's not me sat here going, woohoo, I've got a microservices project, you haven't. It is, I think this is one of the things I've learned is microservices as a technology stack and the chaos monkey, that's a really high bar to set, and you need to set it. So if you're going to deploy microservices, deploy the chaos monkey. Yeah? So there's a lot of work that needs to go into that. I now am always minding the gap. After watching Coder Halls, everything I do now, whether it's technical or whatever, I'm always thinking about, am I checking that what I think is true is true? A lot of what I thought about my R&D organization, I thought we had the best R&D organization in the world, and that's almost true, but there was a big gap. And so some of the issues there should have been monitoring everything you do, every aspect. And then culture is really, really important. I'm a die-hard technologist. I thought I really underrated culture within our development team. Microservices really taught me that culture is real. I'm now going to the office. I used to work at home pretty much 5 days a week if I was on a customer site. You know, I got really good. I worked in the Bay Area while my dev team were back in the UK. I got good at being on the phone a lot. I'm now in the office every single day because this stuff matters. It is important. We do some work at home, and so usually everyone will work at home 1 or 2 days a week. But being together and, you know, sharing vision, discussing business value, this is really important. And I think that's it. Oh, this is all you need to remember. Yeah, this is all you need to go and look at Martin Fowler's video. Go and look at Coda Hales. The first 50 minutes of this is brilliant. If it doesn't change the way you think about your job, then you're doing an awesome job already. You know, your job is to deliver business value. It's not to code. It's not to test. It's not to develop DevOps. Everything you do should be thinking about business value. And he's also got a lot. The metric stuff is really cool, and it's all Java based, and it's awesome. That's it. Quick questions.
Oh, thanks, Andy. That's fantastic. We have some time for some questions. Over here.
Can you just define what business value is?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So as a developer, business value would be adding a new feature, fixing a bug, making the code more maintainable. So simple things like that, that's business value. So to a tester, it would be ensuring the quality and things. So Coda Hell goes into that an awful lot of what business value is. So I don't want to give a really bad answer and put you off the concept of business value. He goes into that into a lot of detail to really help you understand what your job is and what you should be delivering. But that's a great question.
What was the question? Microservices, they try to encourage the continuous delivery. And try to understand if you have a continuous delivery pipeline, because you said the contract between developers and testers is a Docker image. So does it mean that you're going in production with Dockers? Or
Yes. So what we do for our test environment, we basically the environment's linked up to Jenkins, so we can at any point revert any component to any version. So you kind of get that for free with the Docker and Jenkins stuff. So we can push any artifact, any Docker artifact into the live system and see how it performs. So within our environment, within our test and dev environment and our shared environments, we are very much doing continuous delivery via Docker images, yeah. And one of the most awesome demonstrations you'll see is all demos fail. And I was watching one on the Teradata product, it failed. The guy just rolled the system back a version, and it literally took 3 minutes to roll back to a previous version that he knew it worked against, which was during a demo. Normally, if that happens to me in a demo, I kind of tap dance for a bit and go, well, we're a bit screwed, oh dear. This guy just rolled it back. So even something as trivial as a demo, the ability to pick a version at any level you want really it's very powerful, and you can do things like the upgrade process is great. If a component's causing a problem, you just turn it off and turn it on again. So a lot of the stuff getting out of the car is quite often quite easy and fully supported. So it's very powerful when you see it, and it continuous delivery is awesome. I'm not an expert on it, so all I can say is awesome. And next question. Oh well.
How are you going about delivery to production? If you use continuous delivery for
Yeah.
development and testing, how do you implement it?
So in terms of so our first product gets released at the end of the year. The team we're assisting is doing continuous delivery to beta customers at the moment. So I haven't been involved in the continuous delivery to the beta customers, and we haven't got any beta customers yet ourselves. So I'll fudge the answer. you've reached the end of my knowledge of continuous delivery. I've just seen it working, and I know that the team we're supporting does do continuous delivery to customers. My understanding is they basically set up a shared repository in the cloud that then the customers then choose when they want to upgrade. They simply then have, because you can't upgrade a customer without them knowing. They still know that you're going to do that, and they still don't like it. They like the fact they can press a button and they have the control. So basically, when you go to the GUI, there'll be a versioning screen, and you can see what versions are available, and you can decide when you upgrade and also when you roll back. I didn't answer your question, did it? Okay. Okay. Okay.
I think we have time for one more.
Favoritism.
Can you explain a bit more about the 0 lines of code for your second product? Is that because you're using all existing projects?
So Rainstore's been into maintenance mode. We had a really big team of 30 engineers. We now have a smaller team, not quite 30 engineers. The product we're working on was one of Oliver's pet projects, but it stalled completely. So they had some great data scientists working on the concept, but all of the engineering teams that had tried to work with the data scientists had just failed because it was a huge problem. Where do you start? And so they were new to Agile, they were new to things like that. So as an experienced Agile team coming in and helping those data scientists deliver a product that was basically a bunch of PowerPoints, a bunch of SQL, a bunch of analysis, they had nothing. They just had a concept. And so as an Agile team, we then came in and kind of worked on the MVP. What do we do first? What do we do next? What do we, because if you were doing Agile for 8 years, that's exactly how you think about problems. But 0 lines of code, because even though the project's been running for a year, they delivered the end. They got rid of 3 engineering teams. So I might not be around at Teradata in 2 months' time, but we're doing much better than the other teams. So 0 lines of code because no progress on product.